When healthy, Ozzie Albies is one of the best offensive second basemen in all of baseball. But staying healthy has been a problem for Ozzie over the last several seasons. We'll discuss another injury-riddled 2024 year for Ozzie Albies and look ahead to 2025, but what is still a great value with his contract. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. If you're new and watching on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button so you can join us here at Locked On Braves. And if you're already subscribed, hit that thumbs up button so others can find us. Leave me a comment down below. It does help others join us here at the Locked On Braves community that we have. And I appreciate all the support that you give me here at Locked On Braves. If you're listening on the audio version, you can help out by leaving a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. On today's episode, we will discuss Ozzie Albies. Look at a tough 2024 season for him, both production-wise and health-wise. And what does the future look like for Ozzie Albies, who only has one more guaranteed year on his contract, although I think he'll be around a little bit longer than that. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ozzie Albies is the topic of our discussion today as we continue recapping the 2024 season for some of these players and looking ahead to 2025. Ozzie Albies turns 28 years old in January, so he'll play all of next year at 28, and he'll be entering his 9th season with the Atlanta Braves. That's just crazy to me to think about. He's been around nearly 10 years at the big league level. For Ozzie's career, he's slashing 270, 322, 470, a 108 WRC plus, a 20.5 F-WAR, 141 home runs, 84 stolen bases. So approaching 200 home runs, 100 stolen bases in the next couple of years if he can stay healthy, which will be a key topic of discussion on today's podcast. In 2024, he played in 99 games, slashed 251, 303, 404, 10 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 95 WRC plus, 1.3 FanGraphs WAR, a 6.2% walk rate, a 14.9% K rate. He was one of the few Braves hitters who saw their strikeout rate go down a little bit in 2024. You look at the StatCast numbers for Ozzie Albies, a 251 expected batting average. That's exactly what his batting average was. A 396 expected slug, a little bit lower, but pretty much right where his actual slugging percentage was. 88.4 mile per hour average exit velo, 34th percentile, 6.2% barrel rate, 31st percentile, 32% hard hit rate is 13th percentile. And none of that sounds good. That's all, in the bottom half of the league percentile wise. But you don't worry too much about that with Ozzie Albies. His average exit velocity, his hard hit rates are always on the lower end because he's somebody who does make a lot of contact. And he's also somebody that swings outside of the zone a lot. And when you do that, you're going to have a lot of weak contact. So you kind of sacrifice that when you are more of a contact-oriented type of swinger like Ozzie Albies is. And so that's why you don't worry too much about it. What you look at with a guy like Ozzie is what is his max exit velocity? Can he get to those max readings? And he had his highest career max exit velocity of 113.7 miles per hour. So getting to that power is not a problem for Ozzie Albies. The only real concern that I see in the StatCast data is the lack of barrels. Everything else isn't too far off his career norms, but he wasn't getting to the barrel as often as we've seen him in his good seasons. But it is kind of the case when he has an injury-filled season like he had in 2024 and like he had in 2022. And like many Braves hitters, an oddity this year was that Ozzie Albies struggled with four-seam fastballs. He generally feasts on four-seam fastballs like many hitters do. He hit just 248 against four-seamers in 2024, the lowest mark of his career. Last year, he hit 298 against that pitch with a 596 slugging percentage. So again, a big drop off there in production against four-seamers. And I'm going to reference this again in my final thoughts at the end of the podcast. But for me, having watched Ozzie play for 9 years now, I feel like Ozzie is a volume player. And what I mean by that is you only get the best out of Ozzie Albies when he plays 140 games. Because of the up and down nature of his game and because of just the profile of his approach at the plate, he's somebody that he can get to those big numbers. He can get to those 25, 30 home runs, 100 runs scored, 80, 90 RBIs, all of that. But he needs a full season to work that up. And that, sounds kind of obvious. You give a lot of players 140 plus games and they're going to get to better numbers, but Ozzie can get to elite numbers in that. And the reason I believe that is just because there is some very extreme hot and cold stretches for Ozzie Albies throughout his seasons. And that's, I feel like, been the case throughout Ozzie Albies' 9 years in the big leagues, is that he can get hot and he can carry an offense for 2-3 weeks at a time. But then just because of the nature of his swing, that he chases a lot, I think that tends to some bad habits. And you can see Ozzie Albies going in some very severe cold stretches as well. And, that's the nature of a season for a lot of players. They're going to have hot and cold stretches. I feel like Ozzie's are extreme. I feel like when he is hot, he is extremely hot. But when he's cold, he's extremely cold. And for him to get to the value that he can bring, you need to have all of those hot and cold stretches play out over 140, 150 games. So again, that's just kind of my personal observation watching Ozzie Albies all these years. And I think the numbers kind of bear that out. You look at the 3 seasons that he's been injured in, 2020, 2022, 2024. Those were his 3 lowest seasons in terms of WRC plus since 2019. 2018 rather was his first full season, and he had just a 100 WRC plus, but he still hit 24 home runs, stole 14 bags in that year, and played great defense. But again, in 2020, 2022, 2024, it's not just that he was injured. It's that when he did play, he had bad seasons or subpar seasons, average to below average seasons in terms of WRC plus. Now let's move to the defensive side of things for a moment. It's gotten bad, and we'll discuss all the injuries, the contract, what to expect, all that going forward. But the defensive side of things for Ozzie Albies has fallen off drastically. And it seems to have coincided with the changes to the shift regulations. And this is my assumption and also partly my observation of what I've seen. I think the shift rules covered up some of the deficiencies with Ozzie's range as well as his arm. And it allowed to hide some of those things. But now that you can't play in the outfield grass, to give you plenty of time to cover those balls in the gaps, and to, give you more time to make a good throw to first base, I think he's been exposed a little bit defensively for where he is lacking. And again, my eye test and also what the metrics tell me kind of coincides with that. Just going by Baseball Savant's metrics, and as I always say with defensive metrics, take them with a grain of salt. I always trust my eyes for somebody who watches this team every day over than what the defensive metrics are going to show me. But he had a positive run value every year from 2018 until 2022, except for the 2019 season. And then in 2023, when we saw these new shift rules implemented, that plummeted to -7. He rated as one of the worst defensive second basemen in all of baseball in 2023. So I don't think that is a coincidence, that all of a sudden the shift restrictions are put into place and Ozzie Albies becomes one of the worst defensive players based on these metrics in all of baseball. Now in 2024, he saw his fielding run value improve to -1, but he still ranked in the bottom half of the league among second basemen. My eye test, just watching him and seeing him play every day, would tell me that he was improved in 2024. I thought he showed a little bit better range, a little bit better instincts, playing defense in 2024. So I think there was improvement, but the issues are still there, and a lot of his issues stem specifically from the arm. There are so many double plays that I feel like the Braves could turn, but they don't because of Ozzie Albies' arm, and also it's just a really long windup when he goes to throw the baseball, that I feel like there's a lot of double plays that don't get turned when Ozzie Albies is the one who's making the turn at second base. Among 63 players who made at least 100 throws from second base this past season, Ozzie ranked dead last in arm strength with an average throw of just 72.5 miles per hour. Now, I understand from second base, you don't always have to make your best throw, but this is averaging all of those throws. And again, this is of 63 players who made at least 100 throws from second base. Ozzie ranked dead last in arm strength. And I think if you are watching this team every day, like many of us are, you could see the night and day difference when Whit Merrifield was playing second base, when Luis Guillorme was playing second base. It was night and day difference between what they brought to the position defensively compared to what we've been seeing from Ozzie Albies for the last couple of years. It's bad. It's also, in my opinion, one of the least important defensive positions on the field. So you can live with it, and that's sometimes where you put your worst defensive player. And if he produces like he's capable offensively, you don't really worry about it. And again, Ozzie Albies is your guy. He's going to play at second base because when he is healthy, he can produce to an all-star type of level. And again, I'm not calling for Whit Merrifield to become the Braves' new second baseman or the Braves to replace Ozzie Albies, just pointing out the facts that when the shift restrictions went into place, Ozzie Albies has been one of the worst defenders, second baseman-wise, in all of baseball. He's also been really hurt, and he's also been very injury-prone, and that's been another negative here for Ozzie Albies over the last couple of years, is that he just can't stay on the field. We'll talk about those injury concerns, the contract situation, his role as a leader, and what to expect from Ozzie Albies going forward. We'll do that here next. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. And if you're like me, you're watching some of the postseason action. Dodgers up 4-0 right now. Looks like they might take a 2-1 series lead. And I see it adjusting as I'm looking right now. The Mets' odds of winning the World Series are going down as this game is happening. They're now at plus 600. The Yankees at plus 105, the Dodgers at plus 120, and the poor Guardians at plus 1,400. So you can see all that. They have awards predictions on there as well. The ALCS MVP, World Series MVP. You can see all that over at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB with Sully for your second listen of the day. You can check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got 2 more shows coming your way this week on the podcast, Lord willing. I don't know which player preview that I'm going to do on Thursday. So if you have any suggestions, let me know down in the comment section below. And then on Friday, we will have our mailbag episode. So get your questions ready for that. Now, I feel like I'm going to be saying a lot of negative things about Ozzie Albies here. I promise I do like Ozzie Albies. But we just talked about the deficiencies on defense. And the other troubling thing about Ozzie Albies is he can't stay healthy. Now, to be fair, Ozzie has played in 148 or more games in 4 of 7 full seasons. Obviously, in 2020, the max number of games played would have been 60. But he only played in 29 that year because of injury. So in 3 of the last 5 years, he's gotten injured and missed significant time. Here are the injuries that Ozzie has suffered in his career: hamstring, elbow, his wrist 3 times in a shortened 2020 season, knee, neck, his knee again, foot, finger, hamstring twice in 2023, toe, and wrist. Again, he has injured just about everything that you can injure, and some of these are significant. Now, some of these are freak accidents, fouling a ball off your toe, getting hit by a pitch, jamming your finger, breaking your finger, sliding into a base. That was after he had just come back. And obviously this year we broke his wrist trying to make a tag, hit his wrist wrong, and he's out. So some of these things are somewhat freak accidents, unavoidable. But man, it feels like he's a player that's pretty injury prone at the moment. From what we have seen, again, 3 out of the past 5 years, he's missed a lot of time due to injury. And that's why I believe it is very important that you go out and get a solid backup second baseman in the offseason. You make that one of your top priorities, that whoever is going to be on your bench, that they can fill in at second base if is needed. And whether that is Whit Merrifield, whether that is a Gio Urshela, and those are guys they would have to sign and bring back as free agents. But whatever the case may be, you need to have somebody who's ready to step in and play every day and anticipating an injury for Ozzie Albies. It's unfortunate, but I think it's just the reality. It's a guy that seems to get injured a good bit, and I think you have to have an insurance policy ready for that. Obviously, every team wants to have great depth and be ready for injuries, but I think for Ozzie specifically, I think you really need to have a veteran guy that's ready to step in and fill that role if needed. And let me clear this up, because again, I feel like I'm being very negative on Ozzie Albies. You are going to play Ozzie Albies. He is my second baseman. Again, it's an all-star level type of bat. You are going to play Ozzie Albies. I'm just saying, I think he's at a point where you can consider him injury prone, and you need to be ready to handle that. Now, again, we've seen kind of an on and off situation. So hopefully 2025 is going to be a year where he stays healthy. But again, 3 out of the past 5 seasons, he has had a significant injury that has cost him a lot of time. Will that be the case in 2025? Nobody knows. You can't predict these things. Like I said, some of these have been fluky injuries that have popped up. But I think that is something in the offseason you really want to take care of, to make sure that you have somebody who can fill in for Ozzie Albies if he does get injured. And Neil White says, love me some Ozzie, Jake. The injuries are annoying, though. They are, because he is a good player. And I want him, obviously, and I think he's a leader. And that's kind of the next thing I want to get to. Another thing you have to consider with Ozzie Albies is that he's one of the biggest leaders in the clubhouse. He's always in a good mood, and that counts for something. I do believe that is important. And that's a big, everything I hear from guys who are in the clubhouse that cover this team every day, I hear how important Ozzie is, but he's got to be there for that. He has to be in the clubhouse. He has to be on the field in order to have that type of impact. And he just hasn't been there a lot lately. And it might not ultimately matter, but he's also great friends with Ronald. And if you want any chance of keeping Ronald around long term, I think it would obviously benefit you to have Ozzie on the team. So again, Ozzie is your second baseman. I want Ozzie as my second baseman, but there are certainly some drawbacks with Ozzie. There's the big hot and cold streaks that he has. There are the injuries that he has, and there are the deficiencies on defense. But overall, Ozzie is a net positive. So I want to be very clear about that. He is a net positive, and one reason that he's a huge net positive is a contract. I mean, it is one of the most team-friendly contracts you will ever see. For, again, a guy who is an all-star level talent, he's making $7 million a year. Now, 2025 is actually the last guaranteed year of Ozzie's contract, where he will once again make $7 million. However, there are 2 option years left, both for $7 million. There's a buyout in 2026 for $4 million. So that almost certainly will get picked up, as it's just, the difference is so insignificant that you're just going to go ahead and pick up that option anyway. There is no buyout in the 2027 team option. But again, I think both of those options get picked up, because, look at it this way. Let's say you're ready to move on from Ozzie as your starting second baseman. Whit Merrifield signed for $8 million last year to be a short side platoon bench guy for the Phillies. Ozzie Albies is making $7 million. So again, it's just a great value for a player who, again, when healthy, is an all-star level talent. So Ozzie Albies is your second baseman. I think he's your second baseman for at least the next 3 years. And again, hopefully he can stay healthy because that's been the big issue for him here lately. So again, that's kind of been the case for Ozzie Albies. What we have seen next, I'll tell you what to expect from 2025 from Ozzie Albies and beyond. We'll discuss that here next. Shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and you don't when you use Gametime, which is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices that you can filter right there, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, which means you'll get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. I love using the Gametime app. Again, I've used it for the last 3-4 Braves games that I've been to. It's just so user-friendly. You can do everything right there in one screen, and I love being able to filter that all-in price so I know what I'm paying, a view from your seat. I know what my view looks like. Everything you need to know. You can see it one screen right there in the Gametime app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, and use our code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. So again, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports stat with over 10 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And now you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Georgia and Alabama. And you got stuff happening there with the postseason as well. All you do, open up your PrizePicks app, click on that MLB tab, and you're going to see more or less for Shohei Ohtani, home runs, whatever you want for your Shohei Ohtani fix that you need. All that right there in the PrizePicks app. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. So let's take a look at what we should expect from Ozzie Albies going forward. And at this point, Ozzie Albies is what he is. And what he is when healthy is a guy who can hit 25 to 30 home runs, a guy who's going to score close to 100 runs, a guy who's going to drive in 80 to 90 runs, and somebody who's going to steal double-digit bases. I mean, it's an all-star level type of second baseman with what he produces offensively. And every year that he's been healthy since 2018, he's been around a 4-win player. So again, that's who Ozzie Albies is when he can stay healthy, when he can play 140, 150 games. He's a 4-win player. He's an all-star level type of player. As I said earlier, though, I do think he is more of a volume player, someone that needs to get that time in order to reach those numbers and reach his maximum effectiveness. But I do think that that's who he is, and I think that's who he will be again with a healthy season. I do think he goes back to switch hitting. I know some people question whether or not he should just stick from hitting from the right side. He hit just 226 right on right at the end of 2024 when he could only swing the bat from the right side. The small sample size of just 31 at bats. However, he did slug 452. Clearly, the right side is his power side. We all know that from what he does against lefties. He's hit 247 with a 434 slug in his career as a left-handed hitter against righty pitchers. So it is better, again, than what we've seen in a small sample size right on right. So I do believe that he goes back to switch hitting, and I believe that is the right call. Although, he decided he needed to scrap it at some point. I think him hitting just righty all the time, I think he'd still be a really good player and a really good hitter. Now, getting to some of your thoughts on on Ozzie Albies, Mass Boost made a good point about making sure that you have a backup for Ozzie Albies. He said the plan there could be to just make sure that you get a good shortstop and Orlando Arcia becomes your backup. And that is a great plan and a plan that I hope the Braves are able to pull off this year. But you're right. I mean, that's kind of what I think Orlando Arcia was meant to be in the first place before he just kind of took over the shortstop job, had a great first half in 2023 and ran with it. But I do think that's probably the ultimate role for him. A couple of other things in here from the comments section. For those who are joining me here live, I appreciate it. David Agnesia, Joe Me, Mass Boost, as I mentioned, Neil White, Albar, the Wild One. Thank you all for joining me here live. And Neil White had a question in here. I might be crazy, but what if the Braves traded away Acuna for a ton of players and money? I don't think the reward is worth that risk. Trading Acuna, you are potentially trading a top 5 player in all of baseball. Those just don't come around very often. And if you were to do that, you would just be banking on the fact that he's not going to be Acuna again. Are you willing to take that risk that he is not Acuna once again? I think that's just way too risky for me, for a guy who is not making a lot of money and who's, when he's been healthy in the past, has proven to be one of the 5 best players in all of baseball. So I do not agree with that. I don't think that's a smart move to trade Acuna. The Wild One says, agree, Jake. I like Witt too, a good clubhouse guy. I think he has to be one of their top free agent targets. Maybe not top free agent targets, but I think he has to be a guy that they go after this offseason. Well, would I pay him $8 million like the Phillies did last year? No. But if you could get Witt for $5-6 million and convince him to be your bench guy, again, to Mass's point, maybe not necessary if you go out and get a shortstop and Arcia becomes that guy. But I do love the veteran presence of Whit Merrifield, what he brought to this team this year after coming over, his versatility, being able to play so many different positions. I would love to have him back. He's a guy that I wanted last offseason, but I did think the price tag was a little bit high for somebody that, assuming everybody stayed healthy, wasn't going to play a lot. And I think it made sense for Witt to go to Philadelphia. But, the Braves, when they get guys like that who are good clubhouse guys, good veterans, they tend to try to bring those guys back. I feel like Witt should be one of those guys. And I think there was a question in the chat earlier, Witt or Gio, which one would you rather have back? For me, it's Witt, just because of his versatility, his veteran presence, his leadership. I would love to have Witt back again at the right price. I would not pay another $8 million price tag to bring him back for what could ultimately be a bench role. But I would love to have Whit Merrifield back. I think he's somebody they certainly need to target this offseason. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Again, let's continue the conversation in the comment section below. Really do appreciate all the comments. Again, let me know who else you want me to review and preview for our off season here as we get into the off season. Thank you all for those who joined me again. Neil White, Monty 2K, Miguel Fria, Albar, all joining me here at the end of the podcast. Really appreciate you sticking around. Again, the Dodgers are up 4-0 on the Mets here as we go into the bottom of the 6th inning, I believe. So again, Dodgers looking like they might take a 2-1 lead. The AL series looks like it's already over. AL's basically being handed to the Yankees at this point, but you got that action going on in the postseason right now. Thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen. Make sure you follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.